Hello guys, welcome to another video, and today we're going to be discussing Blade Vortex and the transfigured version of Blade Vortex, that's Blade Vortex of the Scythe, because yesterday I was reminded of this by a Reddit thread, and to provide some context here, this is the Blade Vortex of the Scythe gem as it was first shown on day 5 of the transfigured gem reveals. So this gem, as compared to normal Blade Vortex, has much higher base damage and added damage effectiveness. It loses the more damage and increased hit rate per blade. It also has a higher cast time and a very short duration, just 0.6 seconds base duration compared to the 4 seconds on normal Blade Vortex. Of note too is the larger mana cost, and it has a much larger area of effect as well. And importantly, notice the 10 blade limit on normal Blade Vortex and seemingly no blade limit on Blade Vortex of the Scythe. So my immediate impression of this gem on first reading was that the idea here is that you're able to scale the skill by investing into skill effect duration and cast speed, so that you can have several blades up at once similar to normal Blade Vortex, and that made sense. You need to heavily invest in those stats to make efficient use of the skill, and at that point it may outperform normal Blade Vortex, or at least have a very different appeal to normal Blade Vortex with the larger base area of effect. Anyway, I didn't think much more about this because I landed on a different skill to League start, and ultimately I didn't plan any builds around this new ability. So Affliction League start comes around, and about 2 weeks into the league I was reminded of this skill once again after being offered the gem from the Divine Font in the Labyrinth. So I thought I'd take a look at what others were doing with that gem. And it was then that I found out that this new gem was actually bugged, and it had been bugged since League launch. The people that had tried to League start it had quickly moved off and re-rolled into something else, because there was 2 bugs associated with this skill. Firstly, the ability wasn't hitting enemies immediately upon cast, so you'd spend 0.8 seconds casting the skill, and you then need to wait 0.6 seconds for the ability to actually deal any damage. That's obviously an immediate problem, and it's going to put anyone off of playing it. But that's not the only thing wrong, because in addition to that, using the skill again while the blade was already active would seemingly just refresh the duration of the existing blade, rather than spawning a new blade with its own duration, like normal Blade Vortex. And so I thought, well, maybe something for next league after it gets fixed. But a week after that, a large patch was released which contained a huge amount of bug fixes, and in this patch, 2 fixes for Blade Vortex of the Scythe. Fixed a bug where Blade Vortex of the Scythe was not always hitting directly after being cast. Alright, great, so now it immediately hits upon cast, that's a good start. Fixed a bug where Blade Vortex of the Scythe did not describe its blade limit. Oh no. Blade Vortex of the Scythe has a maximum blade limit of 1. Really? So the refreshing of a blade stack was actually the intended behaviour here, because the skill is limited to having only 1 stack, compared to the 10 stacks on normal Blade Vortex. Let's actually compare the 2 abilities. So both normal BV and BV of the Scythe hit approximately 1.67 times per second given a long enough duration. But normal BV gains a more damage multiplier and a faster hit rate per blade stack. So first, let's look at BV of the Scythe. And with level 20 gem and 20% quality, the skill has an average hit of 902 damage, with 1.67 hits per second. This translates to 1504 DPS. Now, gem quality on BV of the Scythe adds some extra duration, bringing it up to 0.8 seconds with 20% quality. If you had a gem with less than 20% quality, the duration would be lower than the cast speed, which means that if you stand in place and only cast BV of the Scythe, you'd actually hit more than 1.6 times per second, because you'd be hitting twice per cast of BV of the Scythe, once immediately upon cast and again 0.6 seconds into the duration. And with a base 0.8 second cast time, you'd be hitting 2.5 times per second for a DPS of 2255. That's not very realistic in actual gameplay, but I thought I'd include it here for the comparison. Alright, what about normal Blade Vortex? At gem level 20 with 20% quality, normal BV has an average hit of 175, but it gains 35% more damage per blade stack, and 40% increased hit rate per blade stack as well. So with one blade stack, the ability will hit 2.25 times per second with an average hit of 237 damage for a DPS of 533. With 3 blade stacks, the ability hits 3.41 times per second for an average hit of 360 damage, resulting in 1,227 DPS. And at 4 blade stacks, the ability has 1,685 DPS, already dealing more damage than BV of the Scythe at a normal hit rate of 1.67 times per second. And at 5 blade stacks, normal BV deals the same DPS as just standing in place doing nothing but casting BV of the Scythe. And obviously at 10 blade stacks, the DPS absolutely eclipses that of BV of the Scythe. So what's going on here? One of the only ways that you can scale damage outside of the normal means on Blade Vortex of the Scythe is to do some shenanigans with increased cast speed and reduced skill effect duration. So in theory, as long as your skill duration is lower than your cast speed, you can spam the ability to consistently deal the instant portion of the damage, because using the skill again won't refresh its duration, as it's already ended by the time you cast again. But the problem with this is that you don't really gain anything compared to just using another ability where you don't need to worry about any duration scaling at all, and you can just scale cast speed exclusively. For example, you could just use the new Ethereal Knives of the Massacre, which fire projectiles in a large AoE around you. It deals more damage, has more damage effectiveness, and has a lower base cast speed. And in the comparison between normal BV and BV of the Scythe, I didn't even discuss the mana cost and the uptime of these abilities. Normal BV spends half a second casting to have a stack up for 4 seconds, but BV of the Scythe would need to spend all of its time casting the ability because of how low the duration is, essentially forcing you into scaling duration. Not to mention the giant difference in base mana cost. 16 on normal BV compared to the 26 of BV of the Scythe. So why would you ever use Blade Vortex of the Scythe? The one thing that the transfigured version of Blade Vortex has going for it is the far superior area of effect, but the playstyle of normal Blade Vortex is typically in a mapping build paired with explode modifiers, which make the small area of effect much less of a problem, but it's nevertheless something that should be considered when comparing the two abilities. So I do wonder if there has been a miscommunication here at some point between the original design concept of Blade Vortex of the Scythe and its implementation and then subsequent bug fixes. The intentionally low duration and high cast speed definitely made it appear like the skill was designed to be able to be scaled with duration and cast speed modifiers so that you could achieve multiple blade stacks simultaneously with enough investment. However, with its current implementation having one maximum blade, it would need a very significant damage increase for players to even consider it over other options. Have you tried Blade Vortex of the Scythe this league? Perhaps you even tried to league start it and had to switch off of it onto something else? Do let me know by commenting below. And thank you very much for watching this video. As always, stay tuned and stay safe.